This is not the project I started out to make, but it turned out very well. This is a beautiful natural edge elm bowl. Please stay tuned to see how this came about. Sometimes things don't turn out the way I hoped for, and I've decided to keep this footage in. This was a project that I thought I was doing this week, but as you're going to see in a moment, plans change. It was going to be a banana bowl. You've seen that on some previous videos on my channel. A banana bowl is a bowl that is long and narrow and does not look like it's round, but you can see as it's spinning here, in actual fact, it does make a circle, but it's very exaggerated. I've turned a flat spot and then I've turned it around on my lathe, and at this point my tailstock is disengaged and all I had to do was remove the centerpiece. And then, as in life, again, things don't always turn out as you expect. It's interesting to watch it here in slow motion. You can see that it continued to spin for quite a while before it hit the floor. Also notice that I was not standing in the line of fire. Now I have had tenons break in the past, and usually they hit the floor and I'm able to save them, but unfortunately this piece was a little bit beyond that. Not only did it break a piece off, which I could have glued back on, but you can also see the crack that ran through the rest of it. So I decided to scrap that and change of plans and make a natural edge bowl. Fortunately, this one turned out. Sorry to spoil it, but please stay till the end and see exactly what I did with this. So when doing a natural edge bowl, the one thing that you want to do is you mount it on the lathe on the top of the log. So you have the curvature that is mounted on a face plate, and then you work the bottom up. So you'll see here in a minute how as I take the sides down on this and start to make a bowl shape, it becomes, in the end, shaped like a saddle, so that the sides on two opposing sides are lower than the two opposing sides that are at the top of the log. Again, that will become obvious here as I turn a little bit more away. This bowl does end up being a natural edge bowl as opposed to a live edge bowl because I was not able to keep the bark, which is what makes the difference between a live edge and a natural edge. You can see here that I'm adjusting my tool rest. I want to keep it as close to the workpiece as I can. That'll give me my best cut, keeping the tool supported as much as possible, especially when turning something like this that is non-continuous. If the tool is very far away from the work, then it can cause some tear out because the tool will start to bounce. But by keeping the tool rest as close as possible, that helps minimize this. So hopefully here, even though I've got it sped up a bit, you can start to see the shape starting to take place. And again, I think it's obvious why I referred to this as a saddle shape. Similar to a banana bowl, when it's done, it doesn't always look round, but it's not as extreme. And with this, you will be able to see the bottom at all times, and it's relatively obvious that it was a round piece. As I mentioned, this wood is elm, and it's very hard. So I did switch tools that I used to shape the outside of this bowl. I went between my gouge, my scraper, and my carbide tool. But in the end, as usual, I did find that the bowl gouge gave me the smoothest surface with the least amount of tear out. As I got near to the final finish, I did use a scraper just to remove small tool marks in the bowl. I'm going to explain something here that I have talked about before. But you see here, and some woods are worse than others, depends on the grain orientation as well. I'm getting tear out here. Now I could sand that, but I don't know if you can tell, but you know, that's a millimeter or two thick. So in order to sand that out, I've got to take a millimeter or two off of the whole thing. So normally I would use my negative rake scraper, and I've sharpened this up and I've tried my negative rake scraper. Normally that does the best job at giving me a finished cut, but it's not doing a good job today. This wood, for whatever reason, the negative rake scraper is not doing a good job. The other thing is, as usual, I'm getting air. I'm turning here, then I get air, and then I come back around here. So it is bouncing a little bit, which doesn't help. And again, it would be way too much sanding. So what I'm finding is working the best is using my bowl gouge, riding the bevel, so that's this part here, starting down low and doing a push cut up this way. So I'm going what's called uphill, and it's supported cut. If I tried to come this way, what happens is, because I'm pushing on these fibers and because of the shape of the bowl, as I push down on them, there's nothing holding them up and they'll fray. So by going this way, then I'm always pushing these fibers into the ones ahead of it. So it gives me a much better cut. Except for right here, because the shape is actually going the other way. So I'll probably remove that so I get a supported cut there as well. And I should be able to eliminate a lot of that so that I won't have to do nearly as much sanding. That gives me a lot better cut. Most of the tear out is gone now, so be a lot less sanding. I see I'm going to have to take quite a bit off of here yet because I've got a piece going this way. So I'm going to take a little bit more, but it's giving me a lot smoother surface. All right, that's the best I've had so far. Still a bit of sanding to do, but a lot better than what it was. I've got a weird lump right here, so I'm going to smooth that in, and then work a little bit more up here. But after that, I think I'm in good shape. I never noticed this. I do have a bit of a divot here. Looks like maybe a branch, something grew around it, a bug hole, something. Now that the outside is finished, you can see that I flipped it around. I had turned a tenon on the bottom of the bowl, and that's mounted in my drive. I've kept the tailstock engaged, initially with the faceplate still on. I can put my live center on my tailstock right inside that faceplate, and that just gives me a little extra support to get started. Once I establish the rim, obviously the faceplate will be in my way, and I'll stop and remove that faceplate, but still keep my tailstock engaged as long as possible. And again, the reason for doing that is I want to avoid what you saw earlier in the fail video where you saw the tenon break off of the bowl. So now you can see the faceplate has been removed. Tailstock is still engaged, but I've got a lot more space to work within the inside of this bowl. And it doesn't take very long. I can hollow the inside of this out and then get ready to sand it. With the bulk of the inside of the bowl removed, at some point the tailstock does get in my way, so I'll remove it and then remove that final piece of wood. Once I do that, you can see here I've got a lot more swing with my bowl gouge, so I can just start at the outside rim and ride that bevel right down to the bottom of the bowl. With the tailstock there, I wasn't able to swing my bowl gouge far enough to what is our right in order to be able to ride the bevel down the side of the bowl. One of the advantages of turning one of these natural edge bowls is it makes it very easy to see the thickness that you're dealing with, because the rim of the bowl basically goes down almost to the bottom of the bowl, so you're actually looking at the thickness of the bowl and can see it quite easily. Hopefully you can see that here in this shot. So now I'm just stopping it and inspecting it to make sure that I'm smooth. One of the spots that's probably the most difficult on a bowl to turn, especially one this shape, is the transition point from the side of the bowl to the bottom of the bowl. I'll spend a lot of time just working in this transition point, and eventually when I start sanding, that's also the spot that will take up the most amount of time. I should explain what I'm doing here. I had some lines right on the edge of the bowl that I was trying to remove, but because my lathe is up against the wall, I really have a difficult time to work what would be on the left-hand side of this bowl. But my lathe, I can reverse the direction and actually put the tool rest on the right side of the bowl and be able to work that side of the bowl with the lathe turning in the opposite direction. This makes it a lot easier for me to see when I remove those lines or not. Here you can see I ended up with a small crack running down the side of the bowl. I just filled that with CA glue and some sawdust. And this week I chose to use sawdust as opposed to coffee, just because it's running perpendicular to the grain. Okay, the bowl is finished sanding, and I've applied one coat of tung oil. It's brought out the color beautifully. It's really pleased with the way it turned out. It's got a lot of character. Again, if I haven't mentioned, this is elm, and it's a natural edge bowl. But yeah, you can see it's really darkened it up nicely and really brought the character out. So I'll put a couple more coats on this, and then we'll turn it around and cut this tenon off. I often get asked about the tenon on the bottom of the bowl and how I remove it. I've shown this previously in channels, but I have had some questions. So here I just put a waste block and some anti-slip material in my chuck, and then I reverse mount the bowl. When I turned it originally, the tenon, I brought the tailstock up to make a small indentation, and that's a marker for me when I re-engage my tailstock in this position, so I can put that point in the exact center, which helps maintain the balance of the bowl. Once I do that, I turn at fairly low speed, and then I just use my bowl gouge and just make some light cuts across the bottom, putting most of my pressure towards the headstock. And you can remove that tenon fairly quickly. Now here I did have on the foot some small scratches that I really couldn't see in the other orientation of the bowl, so I just took my skew chisel and sharpened that edge up so it was nice and crisp, and then took some sandpaper and cleaned everything up. One thing that you'll find is the first thing everybody does, especially anyone that's done any turning, when they look at your bowl, they'll flip it upside down and take a look at the bottom, so don't forget the bottom. So here's the finished product. I really like the way this natural edge turned out. And the wood itself has a ton of character. And the tung oil brought out some nice color. Here you can see those wormholes that I was mentioning earlier. They're not rough or anything like that, but they just are discoloration. For a project that was a secondary idea after a fail, I'm pretty pleased with the way it turned out. And this bowl is going to be a Facebook like and share giveaway.